Welcome back to the Lantern Archives. I'm Paul, and tonight we're opening a file that comes to us from a small village in Taiwan, just after the end of World War II. It's a story about four friends whose lives are about to change forever, about a young man who disappears into the jungle for 26 days, and about a creature so quiet, so overlooked, that it moves through their world like a shadow. Ancient, patient, carrying secrets no one thinks to ask about. So, settle in, turn down the lights. This is the story of Kenji and the walking pinecone. Our story begins in 1946, in a village tucked into the mountains of southern Taiwan. The war has just ended 10 months ago, but its shadow still touches everything. Japanese have left, taking their language and their laws with them. The Kuomintang, the Chinese nationalist government, have arrived from the mainland, bringing new rules, new currency, new uncertainties. The village lost 12 young men to the war, some to Japanese labor conscription, others to fighting they never understood. The families that remain are grateful to be alive, but they're also learning to navigate a world where the future feels both promising and precarious. In this village where the morning mist still clings to terraced rice fields and the sound of temple bells drifts down from the mountains, life is slowly returning to older rhythms. Here, people bow to their ancestors. They still read the weather in a flight of birds and still believe that some things cannot be explained, but only respected. At the heart of our story are four friends, each carrying names that bridge the old world and the new, each trying to rebuild their lives in a time when nothing feels certain. First, there's Kenji, 24 years old, with the lean, wiry build of someone who spends his days all in bicycle frames and climbing ladders to reach high shelves. His hands are permanently stained by bicycle grease and axle oil, dark crescents under his fingernails that no amount of scrubbing can remove. There's something gentle about his face, with soft brown eyes that crinkle at the corners when he smiles, and hair that stubbornly falls across his forehead no matter how often he pushes it back. His Japanese name marks him as a child of the occupation, but his heart belongs entirely to this mountain village. He and his uncle run the village's combination general store and repair shop. It's one of the few places that still has kerosene for the lamps, where people bring broken farm tools and bicycles that survived the war but need constant attention. Kenji has this habit of humming while he works, old Taiwanese folk songs his father used to sing, and he has an uncanny ability to diagnose mechanical problems just by listening to the sounds something makes when it's not working right. Kenji has this gift for fixing things, not just machines, but situations. When the old widow Chan's cart loses a wheel, Kenji appears with exactly the right bolt. When the temple's ceremonial gong develops a crack from shrapnel damage, somehow Kenji finds a way to make it ring true again, spending hours filing and adjusting until the tone was perfect again. He's the kind of person who notices when someone is struggling and simply shows up to help, never making a big show of it. And he's deeply, quietly in love. Living in the same house is his younger sister, Hua. 21 years old, she's smaller than her brother, but carries herself with a quiet confidence that makes her seem older than her years. Her hair is always neatly braided down her back, and she has a way of tilting her head slightly when she listens, as if she's hearing something beyond just the words people speak. Her eyes are darker than Kenji's, more thoughtful, and she has a habit of pausing mid-conversation, her gaze drifting toward the window or the forest edge, sensing something others can't detect. Hua is the keeper of the village's quieter wisdoms. Her name means splendid or magnificent, and she has this way of knowing things before they happen. She can sense when the rains will come early, when someone is falling ill, or when the village dogs are nervous about something moving in the forest at night. She keeps a small journal where she records these patterns, not superstitions, but careful observations of the connections between seemingly unrelated events. When she's not helping in a store, Hua tends a small herb garden behind their house, growing medicinal plants that the village midwife taught her to cultivate. She has gentle hands and an endless patience for coaxing things to grow, whether they're plants, friendships, or tentative truth. People often find themselves telling her things they hadn't planned to share, drawn by her quality of listening without judgment. Their father died in the war, conscripted into Japanese auxiliary forces as a forced laborer, worked to death hauling supplies through the mountains for an army he never chose to serve. Their mother still lives with them, helping to run the household and preparing eagerly for Kenji's upcoming wedding. She's been saving fabric scraps and small treasures for years, dreaming of the day she could help celebrate her son's marriage. What most people call Hua's odd pet isn't really a pet at all, and it wasn't her choice to keep it. When Hua was 13, a pangolin simply appeared one day in their courtyard. And if you've never seen one before, imagine a walking pinecone about the size of a small dog, covered in overlapping scales that look like ancient armor. It showed no fear of humans, made no attempt to leave, and seemed to have decided that this house, this family, was where it belonged. Hua called it Lian, which means lotus, because, she said, like the lotus flower that blooms unexpectedly from muddy water, the pangolin had appeared when least expected, but somehow at exactly the right moment. To most people, Lian is just a strange, quiet creature that shuffles around the house and ignores human presence. It doesn't play, doesn't seek attention, doesn't do any of the things people expect from pets. It simply exists, watching and waiting. But Hua has always known there was something different about Lian. Hua would often point out to her brother how Lian seemed to know when visitors were coming, moving to the window 5 minutes before anyone arrived. When Kenji dismissed this as normal animal instincts, she would mention how the pangolin disappeared for days at a time, always returning just before important events like the harvest moon ceremony or the tax collector's visit. Though Kenji suggested she was simply looking for patterns, Hua remained convinced there was something more deliberate about Lian's behavior. The village elders, the ones who remember stories from before the Japanese came, sometimes nod knowingly when they see Lian cross the square. They whisper a word in Taiwanese that the younger generation doesn't understand: 神仙, or spirit guide, guardian of the mountain path. But that's just old superstition, isn't it? A few houses down the narrow village lane lives Hana, 22 years old, with the kind of quiet beauty that grows more striking the longer you know her. She's petite but strong, with graceful hands that never seem to rest, and expressive dark eyes that light up when she's excited about a new embroidery pattern or a particularly clever design solution. Her hair is usually pinned up in a practical bun, but a few strands always escape to frame her face, and she has this unconscious habit of tucking them behind her ear when she's concentrating. Hana does beautiful embroidery work, table runners, ceremonial garments, and wedding accessories for village families. Her fingertips are always stained with indigo and red dye, and she has this way of seeing beauty in things others overlook. The pattern frost makes on a window, the way afternoon light catches in a spider's web. the subtle color variations in a piece of worn fabric that most people would discard. She has an artist's eye, but also a practical mind, able to calculate exactly how much thread she'll need for a complex design, or how to adapt a traditional pattern to work with whatever materials are available. When she's not working on commissions, Hana loves to experiment with new stitching techniques, sometimes spending entire evenings trying to recreate a pattern she glimpsed on a traveling merchant's clothing. She has a small collection of threads in colors that aren't available locally, gifts from grateful customers or careful purchases from traders, and she hoards them like treasures, using them only for the most special projects. She's also surprisingly good at bargaining, able to negotiate fair prices for her work, while maintaining the relationships that keep her business thriving. Kenji and Hana have known each other since childhood. He was 7 when he started grade school. She was 6 when she joined the following year. And even then, the village matchmaker had quietly noted their compatibility to both families. When they were teenagers, the village fortune teller observed what everyone already suspected. Together, they could build something hopeful from the losses both their families had endured. The betrothal was arranged with great ceremony, sealing a match that felt as natural as the changing of the seasons. Their wedding is 3 weeks away, and both mothers have been working together for months, planning every detail of the celebration, a chance for joy after so much loss. Then there's Wei, who lives a few streets over near the sugarcane fields. 25 years old, built like a mountain and just as reliable. Broad shoulders, thick arms, and a solid presence that makes people feel safer just by being in the same room. His face has the weathered look of someone who spent years working outdoors, with deep-set eyes that miss nothing, and hands scarred from both honest labor and harder experiences he doesn't discuss. When he walks, it's with the measured pace of someone who thinks before he acts. And when he speaks, people listen because they know he doesn't waste words. His name means great or strong, and he's grown into it completely. Wei runs his family's sugarcane operation with extraordinary precision and organization. He has an engineer's mind trapped in a farmer's body, able to see complex systems and inefficiencies that others miss. His workspace is meticulously organized. Every tool has its place. Every process has been optimized through careful observation and adjustment. He keeps detailed records of weather patterns, crop yields, and market prices in neat handwriting that would impress a government clerk. Those skills didn't come easily. When Wei was 18, he was conscripted into Japanese auxiliary forces, not as a soldier, but as a forced laborer supporting their military operations. Kenji's father had been conscripted into the same brutal system a year earlier, and Wei watched with growing dread as news filtered back to the village about the back-breaking, dangerous work that was killing many of the conscripts. In 1940, when word came that Kenji's father had died hauling supplies through treacherous mountain passes, worked to death by officers who treated Japanese conscripts as expendable resources, Wei felt something harden inside him. He realized that the Japanese didn't care if Taiwanese workers lived or died, but he did, and he refused to let anyone else from his village suffer the same fate. So Wei made himself indispensable as an organizer. He figured out the safest routes through dangerous terrain, the most efficient ways to distribute rations so everyone got enough food, the best methods to complete work quotas without killing his crew. Every skill he developed was an act of quiet resistance, not against the Japanese military objectives themselves, but against their indifference to Taiwanese lives. He couldn't stop the war, but he could honor his fallen friend by keeping every other person alive. By the time Wei returned home in 1941, he had learned to think systematically about complex problems, but the lessons had cost him friends and nearly his own life. More than that, he carried the weight of knowing he had survived, while Kenji's father had not. Now he uses those hard-won skills to help his village thrive. For 5 years since returning from auxiliary service, Wei has quietly become the person everyone turns to in crisis. When there's a problem, flooding, harvest crisis, anything that required organization, people don't ask Wei for help. They just show up at his door and wait for him to start drawing diagrams and assigning tasks. Wei believes in maps and schedules and solutions that can be drawn out on paper, but he also believes that some knowledge comes at too high of a price, and he never talks about where he learned to organize so effectively. His dedication to Kenji's family runs deeper than friendship. It's a debt he owes to a man who didn't make it home. The four of them spend most evenings together, usually at Kenji and Hua's house, talking about plans for the future, about the changes coming to Taiwan, about small village gossip. Hana and Hua work on embroidery while the men discuss trade routes and repair jobs. Their mother brings tea and join the conversation, sharing stories and advice. It's a comfortable routine that gives them all a sense of family in a world that has taken so much away. Keep that sense of connection in mind. It'll matter very soon. Tuesday morning, 3 weeks before the wedding. The air carries the scent of jasmine tea and wood smoke from cooking fires, mixed with the promise of afternoon rain. Kenji is preparing for a significant journey to Guishan, the mountain town where Tuesday market days bring traders from across the region with goods unavailable in their small village. It's a challenging journey through winding mountain roads that the Japanese built, but never quite finished. But it's worth it. Kenji had arranged to trade a box of refurbished bicycle parts and small tools for wedding materials that aren't available locally. Red silk fabric for Hana's traditional qipao, gold thread for the ceremonial embroidery, and for bicycle repair supplies that their small village desperately needs. The red silk is genuinely important. Hana deserves beautiful fabric for their wedding day, and his mother has been dreaming of this celebration for years. But Hana and his mother have already described exactly what to look for, so that purchase can be made efficiently. What will really take time is finding the right bicycle repair supplies, like ball bearings, spoke wire, tire patches, and other components that keep breaking down from constant use, but are impossible to get in their village. Those require his expertise to select properly and could keep his business running for months. Kenji loads his bicycle carefully. A wooden crate strapped to the back rack containing various bicycle chains, brakes, cables, small tools, and lamp parts that he's repaired over the past months. These items are in high demand in Guishan, where more people are getting back on their feet after the war. Their mother emerges from the house carrying a cloth-wrapped bundle of rice balls and preserved vegetables for his journey, along with a small bottle of the herbal tea she makes for long travels. With the concern that only a mother can feel, she reminds him that the roads have been washed out from the rains and makes him promise to walk the bicycle in dangerous places. Kenji assures her with gentle confidence, and he knows the roads, that he knows the roads and will be careful. But Hua, sensing something troubling about this journey, quietly advises her brothers to stay on the main path and not let impatience guide him. There's something in her tone that makes Kenji pause in his packing, but Wei arrives before he can ask what she means. Wei approaches with his characteristic thoroughness, carrying a hand-drawn map. He's marked the current road conditions, noting that the main bridge is still damaged from the war, so Kenji will need to take the upstream crossing. He also reminds Kenji that Tuesday is market day in Guishan, so the traders will have their best selection. Kenji studies Wei's precise map, noting the alternate routes and hazard markings. This is why Wei's advice is valuable. He thinks of everything, plans for every contingency. Wei continues with practical guidance. The journey will be long enough without delays, so Kenji should start trading early when he can examine the silk quality in good morning light, then begin the return trip before the afternoon heat becomes unbearable. Kenji nods his understanding as Hana appears from her family's house, moving quickly across the narrow lane. She's carrying something small, wrapped in cloth. With quiet tenderness, she offers it as protection for his safe journey. She presses a small amulet into his hand, a piece of jade carved with protective symbols. It's not expensive, but it's been blessed at the village temple. Kenji accepts it with gratitude, promising to carry it with him. Hana looks into his eyes with deep affection, asking him to come back safely and reminding him that they will be waiting. Their goodbye is modest, appropriate, a touch of hands, a meaningful look. In this culture, in this time, affection is expressed through care and preparation, not through words. Kenji rings his bell twice, his little departure ritual, and begins pedaling down the village street as the first light of dawn touches the mountain peaks. But as he's leaving, something catches his attention. The corner where Lian usually sleeps is empty. It's been empty since Sunday, Hua realizes. 2 days now without a sign of the pangolin. She wonders aloud where the little lotus has gone. It's unusual for Lian to disappear for so long, especially with no apparent reason, but there's no time to wonder about it now. For the first hour, Kenji makes good time on the main road, but these aren't smooth paths. They're carved into mountainsides with grades that require him to stand on his pedals and frequently to dismount and push the loaded bicycle up particularly steep or rocky sections. The route winds through terraced rice fields where early farmers are already wading through shallow water, tending their crops. He passes small roadside shrines where old women leave offerings of fruits and ghost money, prayers for safe journeys and good fortune. The morning sun warms his back, but Kenji knows that the next several hours will be challenging. The road to Guishan requires careful navigation and in several places dismounting to walk the bicycle around damaged sections or up grades too steep to pedal with a full load. He's thinking about the wedding, about getting the silk and gold thread that Hana and his mother have specified, about how magnificent Hana will look in the traditional dress as she performs the tea ceremony for both their families. He's thinking about his mother's excitement, how she's been planning this celebration for years, saving special tea and getting ready for special ceremonial dishes. Then about 2 hours into his journey, he sees something that makes him pause. An old logging path branching off to the right, overgrown with bamboo and wild jasmine, but still visible if you know how to look. A forgotten trail from the Japanese occupation when they were harvesting timber for the war effort. Kenji has heard the village elders talk about this path, usually with a mixture of nostalgia and warning. In the old days, before the war made everything dangerous, people used to take this route out to cut directly across the mountain instead of following the longer main road to Guishan. Kenji considers his options carefully. The main road curves around the whole mountain to follow the easier grades. This trail cuts straight across. but that doesn't necessarily mean it's faster. The terrain will be rougher, steeper probably. He'll have to walk the bicycle more than ride it. But he knows these mountains, and he's strong enough for rough going. Even walking, if this trail is half as direct as it looks, he could still reach Guishan 2 hours earlier, maybe more. And that means more time at the market. He could get the wedding materials quickly and still have plenty of time to look for parts. Ball bearings, spoke wire, and maybe some tire patches. Things they can't get in their village. What Kenji doesn't know is that as he considers this choice, something else is already waiting in the deep forest. Something that has been in position for several days, anticipating exactly this moment. The path looks overgrown, but not impassable, and 2 hours saved would mean reaching Guishan early. Without leaving word for anyone, without marking his change of route, Kenji turns onto the forgotten trail and disappears into the jungle. The first few minutes are magical. Shafts of golden sunlight pierce through the canopy above, creating a cathedral of light and shadow. The air is cooler here, thick with the smell of rich earth and growing things. Exotic birds call from the tree, sounds that belong to the deep forest, not the cultivated valley he's used to. Kenji starts to relax, even smile. This shortcut is working out better than expected. The path is rougher than the main road, requiring him to walk the bicycle over roots and around fallen branches, but it's definitely passable. He'll reach Guishan early, have plenty of time for careful negotiation, and still make good time on the return journey. But as he penetrates deeper into the forest, something changes. The bird calls become more insistent, almost warning. The trail grows narrower, steeper. What had seemed like a well-maintained path is revealing itself to be something wilder, less predictable. Soon, Kenji is pushing the loaded bicycle more than riding it, navigating around obstacles that weren't visible from the trail entrance. The path is becoming less of a trail and more of a suggestion carved into the mountainside decades ago, and then forgotten by everyone except the jungle itself. But he's committed now. Going back would take just as long as pushing forward, and he's already invested too much time and effort to abandon the shortcut. The jungle seems to be closing in around him. The bird calls are getting louder, more agitated, and underneath it all, Kenji can hear something that makes his skin prickle with instinctive fear. Water, fast-moving water somewhere below, and a lot of it. The last thing Kenji remembers clearly is the deafening buzz of cicadas, so loud it seems to vibrate in his chest and skull. The sound builds and builds until it's not just noise but a physical presence pressing against him, disorienting him, making it impossible to think clearly. Then a massive wild boar explodes from the undergrowth directly ahead of him, scarred from years of forest battles with tusks that gleam yellow-white in the filtered sunlight. Its eyes are red with rage or fear or both, and is charging straight at him with the unstoppable momentum of a landslide. Kenji cries out in desperation as he yanks the bicycle hard to the right, but the loaded bike is unwieldy. The front wheel catches a root and the bicycle goes sideways, and suddenly he's catapulted forward, launched clear of the bike as it tumbles away from him. For a moment that stretches like eternity, he's flying through shafts of sunlight, branches whipping past his face, watching his bicycle and its precious cargo spin away in a completely different direction as they both plummet toward the ravine below. The bicycle crashes into the rocks of the creek with a sound like thunder, but Kenji lands hard on a narrow ledge 20 feet away, the impact driving the air from his lungs as he rolls and tumbles down a steep slope covered in loose stones and thorny undergrowth, bouncing from rock to roots until he comes to rest in a tangle of vines, far from where his bicycle lies twisted and broken. Silence. The kind of silence that swallows sound and gives nothing back. Sunset comes and goes. No Kenji. At first, no one is particularly worried. The journey to Guishan is long and challenging, especially with a loaded bicycle. Maybe the trade took longer than expected, or maybe Kenji stopped to help someone with repairs along the way. That's the kind of person he is, the one who stops to help. But as the stars come out, and there's still no familiar ring of his bicycle bell announcing his return, worry starts to gnaw at the edges of the evening. Hua expresses her growing concern to Hana, who has come to wait with her and their mother. He should have been back by now. Even with delays, he should have returned before full darkness. Hana tries to reassure her, suggesting that maybe the merchants wanted to negotiate longer. They both know how careful Kenji plans these exchanges. But their mother sets down her teacup with trembling hands, voicing what they're all beginning to feel. Something's wrong, a mother knows. Even as she says it, Hana is remembering the way Hua spoke that morning about staying on the main path, and both women are thinking about Lian's mysterious absence, 2 days now without any sign of the Pangolin. By midnight, neither woman can wait anymore. They walk through the village to Wei's house and wake him with urgent knocking. Wei is instantly alert, despite being woken. Hua explains through her worry that Kenji isn't back. He left before dawn for Guishan and should have returned hours ago. Wei immediately asks which route Kenji said he was taking, and Hana confirms it was the main road, the same route Wei had mapped for him. This is what Wei does. When there's a crisis, he doesn't waste time on speculation. He acts. The same instincts that kept his crew alive during those brutal auxiliary years now serve his village. Wei decides to take his bicycle and check the road to Guishan. Maybe Kenji had mechanical trouble. Maybe the bicycle broke down with a heavy load. When Hua and Hana insist on coming with him, Wei protests that the roads are dangerous at night. But Hua's response is simple and final. Their brother is on the roads. They ride the main road until dawn, checking every curve, every possible place someone could have stopped or fallen. They reach Guishan as the sun rises and ask the early vendors if anyone saw a young man with a loaded bicycle. No one has seen Kenji at all. By morning, the worry has transformed into something harder and more frightening, genuine fear. Wei organizes a proper search. Within 2 hours, he has 40 volunteers from both villages organized into systematic teams. He spreads out his detailed maps on a piece of cloth in the village square, assigning sections of the main road, establishing check-in times, creating the kind of coordinated effort that turns panic into productive action. These are the same organizational skills he learned in the auxiliary, but now he's using them to save one of his own people instead of keeping Japanese supply lines running. Wei establishes the search protocol. Teams of 4 minimum. No one searches alone. They'll check every section of the road between here and Guishan, every place a loaded bicycle could have gone off the path. If anyone finds anything, and Wei emphasizes anything, bicycle tracks, pieces of cargo, anything, they must signal immediately. One of the village elders mentions the old path too, the logging trails from the war years. They're mostly grown over now, but if someone was looking for shortcuts... And this stops Wei for a moment. He looks at the elder with new attention, admitting he thought those trails were completely impassable. The elder explains that most are, but there is one, the old timber route that cuts across towards Guishan. If someone didn't know how dangerous it's become, and Wei asks the elder to show him immediately. When they check the entrance to the old logging trail, they find subtle signs, recent disturbance in the vegetation, what might be bicycle tracks in the soft earth. But the path disappears quickly into dense jungle. For 8 days, they search. 8 days of systematic, exhausting effort. Every morning, teams set out with renewed hope. Every evening, they return with nothing but fatigue and growing despair. While Wei organizes the official search parties, Hua, Hana, and their mother refuse to sit idly by. During the day, they join the search teams. Hua's intuitive sense for hidden patterns proved valuable in spotting subtle trail signs, while Hana's sharp eyes catch details others miss. Their mother, despite her age, insists on helping at the search coordination point, preparing food for the searchers and tracking which areas have been covered. But in the evenings, when the official teams return exhausted, the 3 women continue their own desperate ritual. They walk the path between both villages, calling Kenji's name until their voices are raw, hoping that somehow, if he's conscious and close enough, he might hear familiar voices and respond. They call out desperately, "Kenji! Kenji, where are you? Son, if you can hear us, make a sound." Their voices echo off the mountains and fade into silence. The only answer is the wind through the bamboo and the distant call of forest birds. But Hua notices something during these searches, something that both troubles and intrigues her. The other animals, birds, insects, even the village dogs, seem agitated, restless, as if they sense something human ears can't detect. On the 9th day, everything changes. One of the searchers, a young man named Lin, who has been pushing deeper into the old logging trail each day, lets out a yell that carries across the entire valley. Lin's voice rings out urgently. "Over here, I found something. Everyone come now." Wei is the first to reach him. Lin is standing at the edge of a ravine that's invisible from the main trail, hidden by a ledge and decades of forest growth. He's pointing down with a shaking hand, directing Wei's attention to something down there by the water. Wei peers over the edge, and his blood turns to ice. 80 feet below, tangled in the rocks of a fast-moving creek, is the twisted wreck of Kenji's bicycle. The frame is bent almost in half. One wheel is completely gone, and pieces of the wood cargo crate are scattered along the water's edge. Broken bicycle parts glinting in the sunlight like scattered bones. Wei's shock explodes into urgent action as he shouts for ropes and for everyone to come immediately. The discovery of the bicycle sends a shock wave through both villages. For the first time in 9 days, they have concrete evidence. But as Wei stares down into that ravine, he realizes their search is just beginning. This isn't the main road. This isn't even near the route they've been focusing on. This is deep in the old logging trail that most people have forgotten existed. Wei addresses the gathered searchers with grim determination. This changes everything. Kenji took the shortcut. He's not on any road they've been searching. They're going into the deep forest. A village elder speaks up with crucial information. That old trail, you should have mentioned this before. His father worked those timber routes during the occupation. He always said the ravines were unstable, prone to slides, and when the rains come, the water turns deadly fast. Wei studies the elder's weather face, then looks down to the hidden ravine where Kenji's bicycle lies, twisted among the rocks. The implications sink in slowly. Wei addresses the volunteers with complete honesty. He won't lie to any of them. What they're about to do is dangerous. If what the elders is saying is true, they'll be dealing with unstable terrain, flash floods, grounds that could give way beneath them. Anyone who doesn't want to continue faces no judgment, but he's going down it. Not a single person leaves. What follows is 13 days of hell. The humidity in the ravine is like a living creature, thick, oppressive, making every breath feel like drowning in warm soup. The air swarms with mosquitoes that seem to have been waiting decades for fresh blood. Everything is wet, slippery, treacherous. Wei organizes the search like the military operations he learned in the auxiliary. Teams rope down into the ravine at first light. They follow the creek in both directions, downstream toward a narrow gorge that looked like it could kill anyone who fell into it, and upstream toward the waterfall that rises like a wall into the clouds. But now his hard-won skills serve for a purpose he can believe in, bringing home one of his own. One searcher reports with grim certainty, nothing downstream for 3 miles. The creek gets too dangerous to follow. It narrows into rapids that could crush anything caught in them. Another searcher adds their findings. Upstream is a dead end. There is a waterfall, maybe 100 feet high, with rock walls too steep to climb. No way anyone could survive going over it. Wei makes the tactical decision to expand the search grid. They'll check every cave, every overhang, every place someone could take shelter. If Kenji survived the fall, he would have looked for protection from the elements. Days blur together in a routine of descent into green hell. It's a constant reminder that the jungle doesn't want them there. Every day brings new dangers. Loose rocks that could trigger a landslide, sudden rains that could turn the creek into a torrent, leeches that attach silently and drain you while you work. Meanwhile, above ground, Hana and their mother are slowly breaking apart. Hana speaks with growing desperation about the reality they all face. It's been 2 weeks since anyone has seen him alive. What if they're not looking for rescue anymore? What if they're looking for... She can't finish the sentence. Their mother's voice breaks with raw grief as she speaks of her son, her only son. Hua tries to maintain hope, insisting they shouldn't think like that. Wei will find him. They all know Wei. He doesn't give up. But Hana's question hangs in the air. What if there's nothing to find? Hua looks toward the forest with an odd certainty, revealing something she hasn't told them before, something she's been watching. When Hana asks what she means, Hua explains that the forest animals have been different. They've been gathering at the edge of the village, but not coming closer, like they're waiting for something. And the birds, their calls aren't normal, they're signals, communication. Something is happening in that forest that they don't understand. On day 18, disaster strikes the search effort itself. During a particularly treacherous descent into a new section of the ravine, 2 of the searchers are caught in a rock slide. One breaks his leg badly, and the other suffers a and concussion that leaves him unconscious for hours. The rescue of the injured searchers required half the team and most of the day. It's a stark reminder of what Wei has been trying not to think about, which is that every day they continue the search, they're risking more lives. On day 20, the monsoon comes. Not the gentle mountain rain they're used to, but a wall of water that transforms the world into a gray, violent chaos. The search has to be called off. The ravine becomes a death trap. The creek swells to 5 times its normal size, and landslides make the terrain impassable. For 2 days they waited helplessly while the rain washes away any trace that might have remained. When the rain finally stops, Wei faces the hardest decision of his life. He rappels down into the ravine one last time, follows the creek further than anyone has gone before, checks every cave, every shelter, every place a human being could possibly survive. He finds nothing but jungle and water and the indifferent silence of the forest that keeps its secrets. But more than that, he finds evidence that convinces him, finally, that no one could have survived down there. The rock slide that injured his searchers has revealed the true nature of the terrain. The entire ravine system is unstable, prone to sudden collapses that would crush anything in their path. The creek, when swallowed by rain, becomes a torrent that would sweep away any debris, any trace, any hope. On the evening of day 21, Wei climbs out of the ravine for the last time. His clothes are torn, his hands are bloody from rope burns, and his eyes have the hollow look of someone who has looked into every dark place the mountain could offer and found nothing. He gathers the villagers in the square as the sun sets behind the mountains. Wei's voice wavers as he makes the hardest announcement of his life. He has to call off the official search. His voice breaks slightly, and this man who has been their rock for 3 weeks suddenly looks very young and very human. With painful honesty, he continues, "They've searched every place a person could survive. The terrain down there isn't just dangerous, it's lethal. The rock slides alone would have, and the water levels during these rains." He stops, unable to finish, but everyone understands. Filled with guilt and sorrow, Wei concludes, "They've lost 2 people already to injuries that could have been fatal. He can't ask anyone else to risk their lives when there's no reasonable hope left." He apologizes repeatedly. He's so sorry. For 5 days after that, both villages exist in a kind of suspended grief. People go through the motions of daily life, but the heart has gone out of everything. The wedding preparations are quietly packed away. The silk that was supposed to be purchased for Hana's qipao becomes just another dream that will never be fulfilled. Their mother sits in Kenji's room, holding his spare work clothes and crying quietly. Hana stops speaking entirely. She sits in her family's house, staring at nothing, eating only when forced. Hua barely leaves the house, as if maintaining the family space might somehow bring him back. Day 26. A farmer named O Chen is driving his battered, war-surplus truck down a remote service road that barely deserves the name. The truck is held together with wire, prayers, and the stubborn refusal to die that characterizes everything that survived the war. It sounds like it's having a mechanical heart attack with every mile. Chen is thinking about practical things, like the falling price of sweet potatoes, whether his daughter will be able to attend the new government school, whether this truck will make it home without breaking down completely. Then something moves at the edge of his vision. A figure stumbles out of the forest, but the figure is generous. Looks more like a scarecrow that's been left outside through a full season. Pinned to the point of being skeletal, clothed, hanging in tatters that might have once been blue cotton, hair matted with dirt and leaves and things that don't bear thinking about. But it's the way this scarecrow moves that stops Chen's heart. It's not the movements of someone who's lost or confused. It's the movement of someone who has forgotten how to be human and is trying to remember. The figure sees the truck and freezes like a wild animal caught in lantern light. Then slowly it raises one skeletal hand. In its grip is something small and red that catches the afternoon sunlight like a signal. Chen calls out with concern and uncertainty, getting out of the truck slowly, hands visible, moving the way you approach an injured animal. As he gets closer, he realizes the figure is a young man, maybe in his 20s, but aged by whatever he's been through, into something that looks ancient. The young man's eyes focus on Chen's face with tremendous effort, and something like recognition flickers there. The sight of another human being, the sound of a human voice, the sudden shock of civilization after weeks of jungle silence. It's too much. The young man's eyes roll back, showing only white, and he collapses right there on the mountain road. But even as he falls, his hand never releases that small red object. 3 hours later, in the district hospital, a nurse is checking the unconscious man's vital signs, and something about his face seems familiar. She's seen this face before in the local newspaper on missing person posters that have been circulating throughout the mountain villages for weeks. The nurse whispers excitedly to Dr. Liu, asking him to come quickly. She thinks this might be the missing man from those mountain villages, the one with the big search parties. The doctor checks his pulse, examining him without modern equipment. He diagnoses severe dehydration and malnutrition, but notes that his pulse is steady. He orders water, small sips only, and rice porridge to be prepared. When the nurse confirms that according to the reports that the man had been missing for 26 days, the doctor expressed disbelief. 26 days in a mountain forest should be impossible to survive. The district hospital in 1946 is a modest facility with basic Western medical knowledge, mixed with traditional treatments. There are no IV drips, no modern monitoring equipment. The doctor relies on pulse taking, visual examination, and careful observation. They clean Kenji's wounds with soap and water, wrap them in clean bandages, and focus on gradual rehydration and nourishment. The doctor explains to his staff that they will need to be very careful. The patient's system has adapted to near starvation. Too much food or water could quickly become dangerous. The phone call comes just as the sun is setting behind the mountains, exactly 26 days after Kenji disappeared. The single phone line in the village rings at the general store where Wei has been sitting with Kenji's uncle, both men staring at his maps, wondering what he missed or what he could have done differently. Kenji's uncle moves to answer the phone, his weathered hands trembling slightly as he lifts the receiver. He identifies himself as Chen's general store, and the voice on the other end introduces itself as Dr. Liu from the district hospital. They have a young man there, brought in unconscious. They believe he might be from their village. The name Kenji ring any bells? The uncle's face goes white. The phone nearly slips from his hands. Wei immediately stands, seeing the shock on the older man's face. With his voice breaking, the uncle asks the impossible question. Kenji? His nephew? Is he alive? Dr. Liu confirms the miracle. He is alive, severely dehydrated and malnourished, but alive. He asks to speak with Wei, mentioning that the newspaper mentioned he was coordinating the search efforts. The uncle's hand shakes as he extends the phone toward Wei, tears already forming in his eyes. He tells Wei that Dr. Liu from the district hospital is asking for him. They said Kenji is alive. Wei takes the phone, his own voice steady despite the emotion. He asks Dr. Liu for the exact location of the hospital. Dr. Liu explains that he's at the district hospital about 30 miles south of the villages. A farmer brought the young man in this afternoon. He was found on a remote service road, severely weakened but conscious enough to give his name. Wei asks about Kenji's condition and whether he can travel. Dr. Liu's assessment is remarkable, actually. Someone who survived over 3 weeks in the wilderness should be in much worse condition. He's dehydrated and malnourished, but no serious injuries. They've stabilized him for now. Wei's only question is how quickly they can get there. Wei, Hua, Hana, and their mother make the journey to the hospital in record time, pedaling their bicycles harder than they've ever pedaled in their lives. They arrive just as the stars are coming out, the perfect mirror of the night when their search began. Hua is the first through the door of his room. Kenji is lying in a simple hospital bed, looking impossibly thin and fragile. But his chest is rising and falling steadily, and when she whispers his name, Hua calls softly to her brother. His eyes open. They're the same brown eyes she's known all her life, but they look different now. Older, like they've seen things that exist beyond the edges of the ordinary world. Kenji's voice is weak, cracked from disuse, as he recognizes his sister. She's beside the bed instantly, taking his hand, which feels like bird bones wrapped in paper-thin skin. Hua's voice overflows with relief as she tells him she's here. They're all here. He's safe now. Wei, Hana, and their mother rush in. For a moment, the room is filled with sound of crying, but this time it's tears of overwhelming relief and joy, so pure it's almost painful to witness. Their mother speaks through her tears of her precious son, how she knew she would come back to them. Wei struggles with emotion as he addresses his brother, admitting they thought they had lost him forever. Hana starts to explain how both villages have been searching, how everyone was involved, but she stops herself, not wanting to mention that they had given up. Kenji asks in confusion how long he was gone. When Hua tells him it's been 26 days, Kenji stares at them like they're speaking in a language he's never heard before. Kenji can't believe it. 26 days can't be right. He remembers leaving before dawn. He remembers the shortcut, the trail, the boar charging. His voice trails off, and a look of absolute horror crosses his face. He explains that after that, he remembers waking up here, seeing them. Everything in between is gone. It's all gone. For the next 3 days, Kenji drifts in and out of consciousness as his body slowly readjusts to regular nourishment. The doctor is amazed by his survival, but puzzled by his remarkably good condition considering the circumstances. The doctor observes that someone who survived 26 days in the wilderness should have more injuries, more signs of malnutrition. It's as if something was taking care of him. On the 4th day, Kenji is alert enough to insist on going home. He tells the doctor he needs to be with his family, needs to be where he belongs. The doctor protests that he's still very weak and should stay at least another week, but Kenji pleads to recover at home. Their mother supports him, assuring the doctor that she's been caring for her children through sickness and health for 24 years. The doctor, seeing the determination in Kenji's eyes and the fierce love in his mother's face, finally agrees, but he arranges for the hospital truck to transport them all back to the village. He insists that the truck can carry their bicycles too. No one rides home in this condition. The journey back is quiet, contemplative. Kenji stares out at the mountain roads he knows so well, trying to piece together memories that remain stubbornly blank. But as they approach the village, he feels something lifting in his chest, the first real emotion he's experienced since waking up in the hospital. When they arrive at the family house, the entire village is waiting. Word has spread faster than wildfire, and everyone wants to see the miracle with their own eyes. But as Kenji steps down from the truck, supported by Wei and Hua, he notices something that makes him pause. Sitting quietly in the doorway of the house, as if it had never left, is Lian. The pangolin looks up at him with those dark, ancient eyes, and for just a moment, something stirs in Kenji's memory. Something warm and protective and gone again, like trying to hold water in his hands. But 3 days later, just as mysteriously as it had returned, land disappears again. Hua finds its corner empty one morning, and despite searching the village and calling its name, there's no sign of the pangolin anywhere. It's as if it came back just long enough to see that Kenji was safely home, and then vanished once more into the forest. A month passes. Kenji regains his physical strength slowly, but mentally he exists in a strange liminal space between the person he was and someone else entirely. The man who returns to daily life is recognizably Kenji. Same face, same gentle manner, same skill with tools and machines, but there's something missing, like a room in the house where all the furniture has been covered with white sheets. Wei tries to help with maps and diagram, and showing Kenji the entire search area. He points out where they found the bicycle, explains the creek system, hoping something might trigger a memory. But Kenji stares at Wei's carefully drawn maps, tracing the creek with his finger, studying the X that marks where his bicycle was discovered, and it might as well have been a map of another world. Kenji apologizes to Wei, explaining that he wants to remember. He tries every day to remember, but it's like there's a wall in his mind and everything behind it is just darkness. Hana tries a different approach. She sits with them in the evenings, talking about their wedding plans, trying to rekindle his enthusiasm for their future together. She tells him how the village women have been working on new decorations since his return. Mrs. Chen had been teaching the children traditional songs for the ceremony, and she's been practicing the tea ceremony with her mother. They want everything to be perfect for when he's ready. Kenji responds that it sounds beautiful. He's sure it will be perfect. But when Hana observes that he doesn't sound excited about it, he admits the truth. He is excited. He knows he should be. But it's like watching someone else's life through a window. He remembers loving her, remembers their betrothal ceremony, but he can't feel it anymore. Their mother tries as well. She cooks his favorite foods and shares stories from his childhood, but nothing seems to reach the part of him that's been lost. She reminds him of when he was 12 and built that little cart for his sister, how he worked on it for weeks, wouldn't let anyone help, and when it was finished, he was so proud. Kenji responds that he remembers the cart, remembers building it, but it feels like someone else's memory. But Hua has been watching, and she's noticed something important, something that fills her with both hope and unease. Over the past few weeks, there have been small moments, fragments that seem to flicker in Kenji's eyes and then disappear. The way he pauses when he hears certain sounds from the forest, how his hand sometimes moves unconsciously to his chest, as if reaching for something that isn't there. The way he unconsciously fidgets with a small red bicycle reflector that he's carried ever since the hospital. The one they've puzzled over countless times, wondering how it traveled from his destroyed bicycle to his rescue point 26 days later. They've discussed the reflector many times since his return. Everyone agrees it's impossible. The bike was found twisted and broken in the creek, but somehow this one small part ended up in Kenji's hand at the moment of rescue. It's become a symbol of all the mysteries surrounding his survival, a tangible piece of the impossible puzzle. Tonight feels different though. The air carries the scent of approaching rain, the same heavy, humid smell that preceded the monsoon weeks ago. And after being absent for nearly a month, Lian has returned. One evening, as the family is finishing their meal, Kenji looks up from the table with a sudden alertness, his eyes having a different quality. Alert, almost wild, like someone listening to a sound only they can hear. Hua has noticed something crucial. Kenji is turning the bicycle reflector over in his hands, the one they've puzzled over so many times since his return, and for the first time in nearly a month, Lian has raised his head and is watching him intently. Hua observes that he's thinking about it again, isn't he? The reflector. Kenji nods slowly, still staring at the small red object. He admits he keeps trying to understand how it's possible, how something from his destroyed bicycle ended up saving his life. Hua sits quietly, watching as Lian uncurls from its corner for the first time since returning this morning, that maybe tonight they'll finally get some answers. She addresses Lian directly, noting that the little lotus must be hungry after being gone for so long. Lian slowly uncurls, revealing its strange prehistoric face. Its long, sticky tongue darts out to probe the bowl of insects Hua has prepared. The moment Kenji sees that tongue from across the room, something in his mind explodes like fireworks. Not just a memory returning, but a door blowing open, a wall crumbling, and suddenly he's not in his family's house anymore. He's lying on cold stone, staring up at a canopy of green so thick it blocks out the sky. Something warm and scaly is pressed against his back, and he can hear the sound of rushing water somewhere below. And that tongue, that same tongue, carefully placing something red and important into his open palm. Kenji whispers in an amazement that he remembers. When Hua asks what he remembers, Kenji responds with growing excitement. Everything! He asks Hua to call Wei and Hana right now. He remembers everything. Within an hour, they're all gathered in the small living room. Wei and Hana have rushed over, and their mother has brewed a full pot of tea. Kenji is sitting forward, more animated than he's been since he returned. In his hands, he's holding that small red reflector, but now he's looking at it like it's the most important object in the world. Kenji begins with quiet intensity. When he woke up after the crash, he didn't know who he was. The fall had scrambled something in his brain, not just his memory, but his sense of self. He wasn't Kenji anymore. He was just a person, a lost person with no past and no idea how to find a future. He tried to look back the way he had come, but from the bottom of that ravine, there was no trail visible, just walls of rock and endless green. No way to know which direction led home, which led deeper into which led deeper into the wilderness. Wei asks with concern how badly he was hurt. Kenji explains that he was scraped up and bruised, but nothing broken. The bicycle and cargo took the worst of it. He was incredibly lucky to survive the fall at all. Hana leans forward urgently, asking the crucial questions. But he was down there for 26 days. How did he survive? What did he eat? How did he find water? Kenji looked directly at Lian with wonder as he explains that that's where the story becomes impossible to believe, except it did happen. He holds up the red reflector, letting it catch the lamplight. Kenji describes the first encounter. He was sitting there trying to figure out what to do when he felt something bump against his ankle. He looked down and there was this armored creature. But here's the thing that should have been impossible. Its tail was curled around something. It uncurled its tail and deliberately pushed the reflector from his bicycle into his hand. At the time, he had no idea what it was or why it was important, but he held on to it because somehow he knew he should. Hua asks in amazement how Lian could have known to do that. Kenji explains that's just the beginning. He was desperately thirsty. The creek was right there, maybe 30 feet away, but it was muddy and fast-moving. He was afraid to drink from it. Then Lian moved away from him, maybe 10 feet, and just looked at him. Not the way animals usually look at humans, but the way someone looks when they're trying to communicate something vital. So Kenji followed. It led him into a crack in the rock wall where pure, clean water was trickling out. The sweetest water he had ever tasted. And that's when he understood that this wasn't just an animal he had encountered by chance. This was something else. Wei interjects skeptically that Kenji was in shock, probably hallucinating. Kenji acknowledges he thought so too, but asks them to let him tell them what happened over the next 3.5 weeks. Every morning, Lian would appear and lead him to something he needed. Edible roots that it would dig up with its claws, plants that were safe to eat, marked somehow by Lian scratching at them with its tail. Water sources he never would have found on his own. His voice becomes softer, more wondering as he describes the nights. When the jungle came alive with sounds he didn't understand, things moving in the darkness, calls that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere, Lian would curl up against his back. It was the only warmth, the only companionship he had. Their mother whispers through tears that it was protecting her son. Kenji agrees it was more than that. It was guiding him. Every decision it made kept him alive, but also kept him hidden. Wei asks what he means by hidden. Kenji explains, hidden from them, from the search parties. He could hear them sometimes, faraway voices calling a name, echoing off the canyon walls. But whenever he tried to move towards the sounds, this creature would block his path, insist they go in a different direction. At first he thought it was keeping him from getting more lost, but now he thinks it was keeping him alive until the right moment came. And when that terrible storm hit, the one that sounded like the mountain was tearing itself apart, Lian led him deep into a cave system he never would have found. They went deeper and deeper, following passages that seemed to go on forever. Hana realizes he's talking about the monsoon. Kenji confirms that for 2 days they sheltered in those caves while the world above became chaos. He could hear water rushing, rocks falling, entire hillsides collapsing. If he had been anywhere else he would have died, but Lian had led him to the one place that was safe, and it was miles away from where anyone would think to look. Kenji explains that this creek system they searched was a death trap. Following those voices would have led him into rapids that would have killed him instantly. The places Lian led him to were like a parallel world. Safe caves, hidden water sources, shelter that was invisible from where they were searching. Wei asks if he's saying it deliberately kept him away from their search area. Kenji confirms he's saying it kept him alive until there was a safe way to get him out. Every time he heard their voices and tried to respond, Lian would guide him deeper into the cave systems, further from the unstable areas where they were searching. After the monsoon, when they finally emerged, they were in completely different terrain. ridge systems and valleys that connected to that service road, miles from where he originally fell. And on the last day, it led him for hours toward the sound of that truck engine. When they got to the edge of the service road, it did something he'll never forget. It nudged his hand, the one holding the reflector, and pushed it toward the light, pushed it up toward the light. He still didn't really understand what the reflector was, but he trusted his guide. He held it up. The sun caught it, flashed like a signal mirror, and the truck stopped. The shock of being rescued, of seeing another human being after so long in a world that felt completely separate from civilization, that's when his mind just shut down. The last thing he remembered until he woke up in the hospital. Hua summarizes what they've heard. So Lian didn't just find him by accident, it was waiting for him. It came prepared with the one tool that could save him, and then it guided him through 26 days of survival until the exact right moment to signal for help. Kenji confirms that's exactly right. They all look at Lian, curled in its corner, apparently asleep. Just a quiet, armored creature that seemed to ignore the human world completely. Wei struggles with his logical worldview, but that would mean it understood, not just instinct, but actual understanding of cause and effect, of timing, of Kenji finishes the thought, of things they don't have words for. Hua says softly that the village elders have words for it. Zen Xian, spirit guide. They've been using those words about Lian for years. Wei asks directly if they really believe this. Do they believe a pangolin planned and executed a 26-day rescue operation? Kenji responds that he believes something saved his life in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Whether that something was an unusually intelligent animal or something more, he doesn't know. But he knows that without Lian, he would have died in that ravine. Their mother says with wonder that it was a guardian angel in a suit of scales. Hua adds quietly that there's something else, something she should have mentioned before. Everyone turns to look at her. Hua reveals the final piece of the puzzle. Lian disappeared 2 days before Kenji left for Guishan. Sunday morning, she found its corner empty. She had a dream Saturday night. She dreamed that Lian was standing at the edge of the forest, looking back at the village like it was saying goodbye. Wei asks for clarification. So he left before Kenji even took the shortcut? Hua confirms. It left to be in position, to be where it needed to be when her brother needed it. Kenji concludes. Whether they understand it or not, he's alive because of what Lian did. And now he thinks they're all connected to something larger than they realized. 4 months later, Kenji and Hana finally had their wedding. It became more than just a celebration of two people joining their lives together. It was a celebration of the impossible, of life returned from the edge of the world, of mysteries that don't require explanation to be miraculous. Both villages participated, not just in the ceremony, but in the collective recognition that they had all witnessed something that changed their understanding of what was possible. The ceremony itself was a beautiful blend of tradition and personal meaning. Hana wore a stunning red silk qipao that the village women and their mother had pooled the resources to purchase from a traveling merchant who visited during Kenji's recovery. The gold thread embroidery caught the morning light as she walked between the ancient camphor trees. And the tea ceremony that followed honored both families and the community that had fought so hard to bring them back together. Their mother wept with joy throughout the ceremony, finally able to celebrate the wedding she had been planning and praying for through all those terrible weeks. Wei stood by Kenji's side as best man, and if you looked closely, you could see him wiping away tears during the vows. This man, who had spent 3 weeks organizing the most systematic search in the village's history, who believed in magic and maps and practical solutions, was learning to make room for mysteries he couldn't solve. Hua was radiant besides Hana, holding the train of that beautiful red dress, the dress that had cost 26 days of survival to make possible. But she also kept glancing toward the edge of the ceremony, watching for something others couldn't see. The vows themselves were traditional, spoken quietly before both families and the village elders. But those who watched closely could see something deeper in their eyes, a recognition of how close they had come to losing everything, and a gratitude that needed no words. When Kenji bowed to Hana's parents during the tea ceremony, his hands trembled slightly. When Hana served tea to his mother and uncle, her voice caught as she whispered the traditional words of respect and gratitude. The ceremony concluded not with grand declarations, but with a simple, profound act of sharing tea, the same ritual that had sustained both families through weeks of uncertainty, now transformed into a celebration of reunion and hope. And Lian? Well, Lian was no longer just a strange, quiet creature that people tolerated because Hua kept it. From that day forward, it was treated with quiet reverence throughout both villages. It got the first and best scraps of food, the warmest spot by any fire, and the freedom to roam wherever it pleased. But more than that, people began to notice things. Children would point and whisper when land appeared at the edge of the forest, just before travelers arrived safely from dangerous journeys. Farmers started paying attention to where land chose to rest, finding that crops grew better in those spots. The village elders began sharing older stories, tales from their grandparents about creatures that walked between the human world and something deeper, older, more mysterious. Stories about guidance that came in forms so humble that most people overlooked it entirely. Kenji, for the rest of his life, kept that small red bicycle reflector on his bedside table. Sometimes, late at night, Hana would catch him holding it, turning it over in his hands like a prayer bead. When Hana would ask what he was thinking about when he held that, Kenji would reflect on the 26 days. How he was lost but never really alone. How sometimes the most important guidance comes from the quietest voices. When she would ask if he wished, when she would ask if he wished he could remember more of what happened during those days, Kenji would respond thoughtfully, sometimes. But maybe some gifts are meant to remain mysterious. Maybe faith means accepting that they don't have to understand everything to be grateful for it. And Wei and Hua, their own story was just beginning. Wei started paying attention to things he had always dismissed as superstition, while Hua began to understand that her sensitivity to hidden patterns might be more than just imagination. Together, they became the village's unofficial interpreters of land's behavior, learning to read the subtle signs that indicated when the pangolin sensed something important approaching. They developed a kind of early warning system. Like when land disappeared, they knew to be extra careful, to watch the roads, to prepare for something significant. Their mother lived to see grandchildren playing in the same house where Kenji had once been lost and found again. She never forgot to leave the first portion of any meal for Lian. Never forgot to whisper a quiet thank you to the creature that brought her son home. But that's a story for another file from the Lantern Archives. That's tonight's file from the Lantern Archives. The search parties followed logic and maps and found heartbreak. Kenji followed an ancient guide and found salvation. It makes you wonder about the different kinds of knowledge that exist in this world. There's the knowledge of organization and systematic thinking, the kind that can methodically lead you to every wrong place. And then there's a deeper, older wisdom, an instinct for survival, for timing, for knowing exactly what's needed in the moment when every rationale has failed. Was Lian just an unusually intelligent animal that happened to be in the right place at the right time? Or are there forces moving through our world that we've forgotten how to recognize? Guardians that choose forms so humble, so quiet that we almost miss them entirely. The village elders knew the word Chen Xian, spirit guide. But maybe the word doesn't matter as much as the recognition that some help comes from places we never think to look, wearing faces we never think to trust. In our rush to explain everything, to map every mystery, maybe we've lost the ability to simply be grateful for guidance that works, even when we can't understand how. The past is full of these quiet miracles, these impossible rescues that slip by unnoticed until someone survives to tell the tale. Stories of ordinary creatures doing extraordinary things, of help arriving from the most unexpected places, of love that guides us home even when we've forgotten our own names. Join me again next time as we open another file from the Lantern Archives. Good night.